With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. It's easy to find time to eat well with 50 wholesome, hassle-free meals to choose from each week delivered to your door. Their lineup of prep and bake meals come together with minimal mess and only 5 minutes of prep. So your oven does most of the work, not you. Get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast. One item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals. Based on a randomized, controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto, results will vary depending on diet and exercise. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
This episode contains descriptions of sexual assault. To speak to someone at the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, call 1-800-656-HOPE or 1-800-656-4673. Julie Ibarra, now Julie Carlson, was a single mom living in Frisco, Texas in 2007.
I was waiting tables, and my daughter was about 5 years old. And we had a really interesting, unofficial custody arrangement. My ex would take her from Saturday through Tuesday.
Monday, April 10th, 2007, was just like any other night for 25-year-old Julie.
Yeah, I was waiting tables that night. I think I had closed the restaurant. And a couple of my friends, we'd always go out to Applebee's or the local bar. This is kind of how the restaurant industry is.
Wind down.
Yeah. I was hungry, so I wanted to go and get something to eat. I wasn't even really trying. I've never been a big drinker. One of the girls was like, "Hey, you should come spend the night at my house. You're all by yourself, and we can have a little sleepover, adult sleepover." And I'm like, "No, I just really want to go home, chill. I don't have my daughter. It's last night, just kind of relax a little bit and unwind for the night." So I had gotten home kind of late. I think I'd got home around 1 o'clock-ish. And I was just hanging out on the couch, doing exactly what I wanted to do, right? Just vegging out, watching Family Guy.
But her relaxing night alone at home would quickly turn into a nightmare. This is Live to Tell, the podcast where I talk to some of the bravest people who have been through the most horrifying things and lived to tell the tale. I'm Caitlin Van Mall.
So I'm sitting on the couch, and next thing I know, there's this loud blast. And I just hear this explosion, basically. And my first thought is, oh my gosh, somebody just set a bomb off on my patio.
A man had used a glass shocker to break her glass patio door.
He then proceeded to come in, and before I even knew what was going on, I had my hair up in a ponytail, and he had just grabbed me by the hair. And it started with him putting the shotgun in my head. He had a sawed-off shotgun, and he said, "Don't scream." I screamed one time. He said, "Don't scream, I'll blow your head off." At that moment, I went immediately calm. And he then proceeded to take me to my room. He threw my purse, and threw me kind of on the bathroom floors. And he threw my purse at me and was having me dump out my purse, had me give him my debit card. and the PIN, which I did happily. I was about to pay rent, so I had all this cash on me being a server. It was all my rent, and I gave it to him willingly. I'm like, just take it, please don't hurt me. And he asked if there was any other money or anything else in the house. I was like, started naming off all these valuable things I had. He wasn't interested in that. He just wanted the cash and the debit card. From there, he took me into my daughter's bathroom and forced me into the bathtub and left the room. And I could hear him rumbling around in the other rooms, kind of like throwing some stuff around and, just kind of going through all of our things. And at the time I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I could just get out of here. Like, the front door is right there. And I almost did, but I stopped and I thought about it. And I was like, okay, the door opens coming inward. It's double locked right now. By the time I get to the door, unlock the door and pull it open, he's gonna get me. Like, there's just no, that's stupid. So it took everything in me to sit there and just wait. And I don't know why, but I just stayed so calm throughout the entire process. And I kept thinking in my head, okay, I'm going to die tonight. Let's just get over that. You're going to die. From all these years of forensic files and watching all that stuff with my mom. And then she had me read this really great book, The Gift of Fear. And all these things just kind of flooded into my memory of like what these other people have done. And I had to leave some sort of forensic path to this guy. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I got to get skin under my fingernails or whatever it may be. So that's what I was kind of thinking the entire time.
Was he wearing gloves at all?
Yeah, he was. He was wearing actually a bandana at first, because I kind of got like little glimpses of him here and there as he's pulling me from room to room. But he came and got me from the bathroom and forced me back into my bedroom and again asked me about any more valuables. And I was like, I just told you what I got, and I'm not trying to lie to you. Like, you can have whatever you need. I think that I had at that point kind of made him really angry because I wasn't reacting the way that he needed from me. And at that point was when the sexual assault happened. So he had forced me to perform oral sex on him. And in my mind, I'm going, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity to get that DNA evidence, right? So he finished, and I knowingly spilled some on my pajama pants. And then he forced me immediately into my bathroom, had me rinse my mouth out with mouthwash, spit everything out, whatever. And then he proceeded to zip tie my hands behind my back very tightly. I think at one point I was like, you obviously know I have a daughter, I'm trying to humanize myself as much as I can.
Yeah.
He was then like, all of a sudden consoling me. He was like, don't worry, I'm going to be done here soon. Let's just have you lay on the bed. And he had me lay on my hands behind my back, face up. And he put a pillow over my head. I'm going, it's kind of weird. But in that interim of being able to lay upwards and seeing him, I saw him completely. I could smell him. I'll never forget that smell.
He left her in the bedroom and went into the kitchen.
I hear him rummaging around in my kitchen. And I'm like, does he want in my kitchen, And he comes back and I hear him walk into the room. And then I just feel 3 sharp jabs to my stomach. And I'm like, this dude just stabbed me. Like, really? That kind of hurt. Now, one of the great things about my body and the way it works, I guess, is you don't easily pick up a pulse on me. You have to be a real trained medical professional to find a pulse. So he checked my pulse and I just played dead. I didn't know that what people do when they die. So I just rolled my eyes back into my head thinking like that's what people do when they die. I don't know.
He probably didn't know either. So
yeah. Obviously I think I fooled him because he did lift up my eyes at one point, and I just was just as still as I could possibly be. And I'm like thinking, well, maybe if he thinks I'm dead, then I'll just go. Well, he did. I heard him walk out the door, and I'm like, oh God, yes. So I get up out of bed. All I'm thinking is get these zip ties off my hands. And I go into the kitchen And this is where I made my mistake. Before I got into the kitchen, I turned on the light. I go to the knife block and I'm trying to undo the zip ties. And I'm like, you know what? This isn't going to work. I just got to get help.
She decided to go to her neighbors for help.
So I go to the door. And right when I get to the door, he's coming through the door. And there was a little struggle at the door. But again, my hands are zip tied behind my back. He easily overpowers me. And he's like, you didn't think I'd see the light come on? And he proceeded to stab me 3 more times right there in the foyer. That time he left, and I laid there for 45 minutes because I was so scared he was going to come back.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like he really needs to think I'm dead this time. And that's when I really actually did start to die. I lost almost all the blood in my body. I just kept thinking about was, wow, my family and my daughter, and I can't leave her here at 5 years old. Sorry, it just makes me scared.
Yeah.
Not having her mother. And I was just sitting there and I just out of nowhere, I heard, get up now. And it wasn't my voice. I don't know whose voice it was, but I was like, oh, okay. So I did. I got up. I got out the door and I got across the hall to my neighbor's door. And they had, thankfully, a dog that barked immediately when I was slamming my body into their door. They opened the door and I just collapsed in their foyer and I threw up. I felt so bad. I threw up all over their foyer. I don't know why that is what happened. But yeah, I mean, it was like probably a combination of relief as well as I was dying. And I kind of like just passed out a little bit. And I could hear the neighbor screaming in 911. She's like, she's dying on my foyer. Come quickly. What are you doing? You know, next thing I know, I'm in this helicopter and they are care flighting me to Baylor, Dallas. And I've got this guy over me just going, Julie, you can't, no falling asleep. You got to stay awake. Tell me stories. And man, those care flight people, those people are they're angels. They're angels because they see that every day and they never know what happens to us, you know?
Oh.
It's sad because they don't get the resolution that most people do. But I did find out that one of my care flight people was connected to one of my other friends. So after the fact, I was able to let them know that I lived and I was good. And they were really, really happy to hear that. So
yeah. But in this moment, when she wasn't sure if she was going to make it another hour, let alone long enough to go back and thank the care flight team, she needed someone to know about the evidence she got.
The entire time, all I could think of was, I have his DNA on my pajama pants. And I just kept telling him in my in and out phase, like, there's DNA evidence on my pajama pants. He's like, okay, Julie, that's great. What's your birth date? You know, and I'm like, are you allergic to any medications? There's DNA evidence on my pajama pants. I'm not allergic to anything. Please, whatever.
Yeah.
And so they're wheeling me in for emergency surgery, coming down the hall, the whole bit. And I'm just seeing this over and over and over again. I'm like, is nobody hearing me? Like, I don't understand. Finally, this dear nurse just leans over me and she goes, I hear you, dear. DNA evidence on your pajama pants. I will take care of it. And I said, knock me out. And I started screaming, knock me out.
After surgery, Julie was in the ICU for a week.
I remember my sister being there and I was really, really angry because I wanted water. I just wanted to drink water. And they were like, here's some ice chips. I'm like, all right, I'm going back to sleep. I'm done.
The next time she woke up, she was out of the ICU and her family was all there.
And because I was a sexual assault victim, they had me under a pseudonym. So I had a bunch of people that were trying to come see me in the hospital and they couldn't get to me because they didn't know the pseudonym. But I'm actually kind of thankful for that at that moment because that was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot to have even my family there. They were really worried about me getting infected because I had, as I said, 6 stab wounds. So one of the wounds went completely through my gallbladder. Another one nicked my liver. Another stab wound pierced part of my small and large intestines. So they took out tracts of that as well.
Mhm.
One of the other stab wounds got about a couple millimeters away from my sciatic, and I would have never walked. And then another one broke one of my ribs. I was very lucky. When we're talking like millimeters away, like my surgeon, he was like, it's crazy that you're just here, because we didn't know if you were going to be able to walk. We didn't know if you were going to be able to get through the red zone where you get infected. And we didn't know if you could go septic again, and we could lose you at any moment.
While dealing with all her injuries and family and how close she came to death, she also had to talk to the police about what happened.
Obviously, when you wake up, the police know that you're lucid. They're right in your face, and they want to know everything that happened. And, they want you to tell the story about 100 million times over and over again. And it's like, God, I just told this to this other guy. Can't you just go see it? I must have written the story out like 100 times. And it felt like at the time that nobody was talking to one another about anything. And I mean, it couldn't be farther from the truth. They were actually forming a task force because I was the 19th victim and the most brutal of the attacks.
A serial rapist had been plaguing the Dallas-Fort Worth area since 2005.
Later, the cops were telling me that, you were intended to be his first murder. It wasn't enough to sexually assault the girls anymore and rob them. He wasn't getting that pleasure that he needed.
Do you have any idea why he stabbed you instead of shot you?
I think because of the noise level. I don't even understand why he would use that, why that was the choice of weapon to use. I think it was really just more for an intimidation factor. I think that it also played into, I wasn't giving him what he needed.
Mm-hmm.
So he really needed to, he needed to get that adrenaline and that sense of fear from me.
Yeah.
He wanted me to plead for my life. And I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction.
But it turns out the noise probably wouldn't have made a difference.
I had screamed one time. That glass made a lot of noise. I then found out later on that my upstairs neighbor did hear everything, and he didn't do anything about it. He said later on to the media that I had a lot of loud parties, and so he thought I was just having a loud party. Never had loud parties. I wasn't that girl. Maybe I'd have a couple friends over, and when I say a couple, it was like literally two, and we were not by any means getting loud ever. It was very disappointing. Because I could understand, in my mind's eye, I could be like, okay, well, it's 2 a.m., everybody's asleep, they're in the dead of sleep, they probably didn't hear anything. But to hear that he had heard something and didn't do anything about it, it's that bystander effect, and God, just pick up the phone and call 911, or I just kept thinking the cops were going to come with all the noise, but no.
Before Julie could get out of the hospital, the doctors had a few stipulations.
I asked the nurse, I was like, how do I get out of the hospital? She's like, so you got to learn how to walk again. I want to see you do a lap or two around the wing. I didn't want anybody really around when I started to do the walking piece. I just see my family's faces of the worry and the pity on them. I couldn't do that. So I remember I did it in the middle of the night. I had called the nurse and I was like, hey, can you make it so that I can move around? She was really encouraging. Oh, you're gonna try and walk, and I'm just gonna stand here, make sure that you're okay, you don't fall. And I'm like, okay. And I got up on my 2 feet, I'm like, all right, this is okay. I'm a little wobbly, but and I did one lap and I was like, okay, I can go home now. And she's like, yeah. But it was a landmark moment for me,
Yeah.
And it was something that I think I needed to do by myself because I didn't necessarily want all my family to be like, yay, and good job. I'm like, shut up. I've been doing this since I was, 1. Like, this is not cool. I want to be able to walk.
It's a lot of eyeballs. It's a lot of fussing.
Yeah. It's too much attention, and it's not the right kind of attention that you want,
When she was released, she didn't go back to her apartment.
I was like, he's going to come back for me once he finds out he knows I'm alive. Like, I mean, after I left the hospital, my sister, Jean, my youngest sister, took me in, and I lived with them until I could get into a new place. And they just really helped to take care of me. God, I love my sister so much now, thinking about that and how much she took care of me. And like, she was very triggered. Oh my gosh, she was super second degree traumatized. I mean, she can't, if you call my sister in the middle of the night, she thinks that people are dying. So,
Well, because why else would anyone be calling it?
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, she goes right into a panic attack. But she really helped me through so much, so much. My gosh. And being a mom at that time was just so difficult. Oh, I had the luxury of not having to be a mom for a couple weeks because I was, in the hospital. And then even after coming out of the hospital I was so weak. I mean, like, I see pictures of myself from that time, and you could just see like all of the blood in my face is drained out. Like, I don't have, it's almost like I'm a walking zombie. And I think it's just because of the massive blood loss that I had sustained. And, she's 5. She's running around and being crazy kid and doing normal stuff.
Julie found a new home and had some special help moving in.
I had a really good friend. They were really involved with their church, and he had shared with the church my story. And these wonderful people that were, part of the congregation there moved me out of that apartment and into my rental house. I didn't lift a finger. It was the most amazing move I've ever had to do. They were wonderful. And they had gotten like a collection together for me because now I can't work either. And, I was a single mom and living off of my, $2.14 an hour and tips. And I had a 5-year-old who was dependent on me. So, there was a lot of community support.
It's hard to say anything about being stabbed 6 times is lucky, but luckily, Julie didn't have to worry about a steep hospital bill.
Because you have crime victims compensation, they have this advocate that helps you to get whatever you need. So you need to go through all the trauma of the crime victims compensation bureaucracy, fill out all this paperwork and making sure that things get covered so that you're not, coming out of pocket. Because I remember distinctly thinking, am I in a helicopter right now? This is going to cost me so much money. Like,
yeah,
put me down. Just put me down. I'm good.
All over.
Yeah. I don't even want to know what that bill is. I'm good. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Crime victim compensation came in. And because I was not doing anything to provoke attack and I was sitting in my own house, they wrote off all my medical bills and everything. And that was really, really great. Probably because I was able to stick it out and actually do all of the bureaucracy and nonsense.
Yeah.
I have had friends that have had to deal with it since then. And man, it is difficult. It's like one of those things where you've just been traumatized and you can't even wrap your mind around living life on life's terms anymore. And you want me to sit down and fill out paperwork and rehash everything over again. And again, it's like you're repeating the story over and over and over again. It's like having to relive the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for that piece of the pie, right? Like, that's not even anything to do with the, cops or the investigation or anything like that.
And the cops didn't seem to be making any progress on finding the man who did this. So Julie didn't know if she might stumble into the guy anywhere she went.
I was in a Walmart and I walked by some guy who was wearing his cologne, and and they hadn't caught him at this point yet either. So it was like terrifying. I was like, I had a total panic attack. Thankfully, my sister, my godsend of a sister, was there. And she was just like, let's just go, it'll be all right. And I'm like, call the cops, I'm freaking out thinking this is him. Like, he didn't even look like the guy, at all. But, you go to a crazy place after these things happen. So,
I'm sure it was so shocking to just be going about your business and being like, memory.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I mean, that is trauma, right? Like, you just never know when those flashbacks are going to come in. For one, I wasn't sleeping at all. I was just so terrified that at 2:00 every day, that he was just going to come back. Every little house sound or anything that happened, I was wide awake and freaking out.
Yeah.
And then I was getting to a point in my mind where I was like, okay, I'm really losing it. I'm at that point was I would go and put my daughter to bed like normal in her room. And then when I went to bed, I would go and get her, scoop her up and bring her into my room. And I'd lock us into the room because if she was with me, then she was there and I could protect her there. And it was just destroying me, the lack of sleep and then the lack of not knowing who I was, being attacked at 25 years old. Already at 25 years old, you're still trying to figure things out. You don't know who you are. I'd say 25 is probably about that time where you start to think about those things and who you are as a person. And now I'm just faced with this whole other identity of a human being. Like there is no Julie from before, In my mind, it's, there's pre-attack and then there's post-attack. And it was just, I was going crazy. So I finally sucked it up and I said, okay, yeah, I need counseling. I need to get help for this. And I was directed to the Turning Point.
The Turning Point in Plano, Texas provides counseling, education, and advocacy for people who have experienced sexual violence.
My counselor was the most gentle and intelligent, and she just knew how to handle me the best. I mean, she knew the story and everything, but it was still like, okay, we got to get down to the nitty gritty here. And she really worked with me. The Turning Point is really there for sexual assault victims. And like I said, for me, the sexual thing of all this wasn't impactful for me. Like that was just like something that happened and needed to happen so I could get the evidence. I don't know how else I would have gotten it.
Yeah, because it's more loss of sense of safety.
Oh, yeah.
Than sexual trauma.
That goes without saying, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it might be like a form of like compartmentalization, I guess. Like I'm able to file it away in this category because that's how my brain has to be able to deal with it, because really that wasn't the hardest thing to get over as far as the trauma of everything. The trauma and the hardest thing to get over was knowing he was out there still.
Julie was the only person that got a real good look at her attacker.
Before I knew it, I was having to make this composite sketch with the FBI and sit down and that was terrible. Oh my God.
To have to sit there and really think about his face.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, not that I couldn't get it out of my head already. The woman that was doing it with me, she says, we're going to wait for the eyes to be the last, because the eyes really are triggering. It's the windows to the soul. A lot of times when we throw the eyes on there, that's when the victims they get upset. But you have to eyes on your composite sketch. If it wasn't for that composite sketch, he would have never been caught.
We'll be right back. Almost 1 year exactly after Julie was attacked, her attacker, Stanley Ledbetter Jr., was arrested.
It's terrible, but it's racial profiling, honestly, I think is what happened. Basically, there was a ATM robbery that had happened. Whether or not he was involved, I don't know. But he was within vicinity of this robbery, which, red flagged him. And then the cop saw him and he goes, he looks a lot like that sketch I saw. And kind of tipped off, at that point we had the task force going. They were in all the cities. And then FBI was also involved. So now they're going, oh, well, we're going to jump right on it, because they had nothing. They had no leads. So, he basically was racial profiled, and the cops kind of jumped on his scent from there. But I did find out that they had to wait until he threw away a soda can so they could get his DNA. And that's how they got him, was the DNA. And I found out that he was living not that far away from me the entire time. So even throughout the recovery, it was pretty much up the street from my sister's house.
Oh, God.
Yeah. He had 2 girlfriends, and he was splitting his time between those 2 places. And I guess the main girlfriend is where he got caught. So I'm like, wow.
You're balancing 2 girlfriends, a criminal career. Who
Yeah,
was the
that's the other thing is I told the cops from the beginning, actually, I said, listen, this guy's smart. He's done this 19 times and he's managed to elude all of you guys. So, don't underestimate him. Well, came to find out that he ended up being like a tax preparer or something like that. So he was good with numbers and all that. And I'm like, yeah, that all totally makes sense. The guy was not stupid.
Ledbetter's grossly prolific crimes caused a lot of harm, to say the least. But it also meant it created a group of women that could uniquely understand each other's experience.
One of the great things that came from this whole experience was I was able to meet 2 of the other victims, one of which we became really good friends. And she was one of the victims that was attacked in Plano. I'm not going to say her name just because I don't want to put her out there like that. But she did not get her justice. There wasn't enough evidence to link him. She just was so grateful that he was gone. And she's like, "You're my hero." Like, she's always tells me I'm her hero. And I'm like, I'm nobody's hero. It was just so oddly relieving to meet another victim of the same person, because it's like you go for so long thinking nobody gets it, nobody understands, nobody ever could understand, and nobody can, nobody lives in your shoes, right? So, but these women did in my shoes, and to see how they have handled it afterwards. I think about the other victims and how long they waited to have any kind of relief. I only had to wait a year. Some of them had to wait many years.
Not all the survivors of Ledbetter's crime spree got their cases prosecuted. In the end, only 3 did, including Julie. Julie's trial was last.
I had a meeting with the DA. I'd say it was about 6 months prior to going to court. And they sit you down and they tell you, so this is what we're going to charge him with. And do you have any questions? This is how this is going to go. And I remember being so angry that day because they came to me and they were like, we're going to charge him with aggravated sexual assault with a deadly weapon. I said, what the hell is that? Like, why don't we just call it what it is? He tried to kill me, so attempted murder. And he's like, having to explain to me, he's like, well, you know about double jeopardy, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, we don't want to come out the gate with all of our, with the huge charge first and then have him, be not convicted for that. Like,
we want to get him.
Yeah. But I gave you DNA evidence. There was no denying that this was the guy, Yeah.
What was testifying like?
Oh, God. It was tough. It's so many different things going through your head at that time. And you're getting cross-examined as though you're like a liar. And at one point in time, I remember getting so angry and being like, you know what happened? I just want to get up and get in his face and be like, you know what happened? I know what happened. Like, why do we have to do this? I think at one point in time, he even had said some ridiculousness that like, oh, the semen came from a condom, a used condom that his cousin or somebody had gotten out of the trash and planted it on me. And like, really, dude? Like, come on. That was really
why?
I saw that one time, and I don't think he repeated that story again because he probably felt pretty stupid.
Yeah, that was pretty.
His mom and sister were at the trial, and they were not very nice. I think I ran into them in the hall, and they knew I was the victim, and they just glared at me like, I think that if I, as a parent, even if my daughter had committed a terrible crime like this, I don't think I would ever treat the victim like that. Yeah. I didn't get to see anybody's testimony. Mm-hmm. The next time I was able to go into the courtroom was when they said, guilty, not guilty. I had my sisters on both sides of me, and when they said not guilty, I didn't know how I was going to react.
What did they say not guilty to?
I mean, not guilty. I'm guilty. When they said guilty.
I was like, wait a minute. To be clear, Ledbetter was found guilty.
I didn't know how I was going to react. I just didn't know where. I thought it would be like, yay. Well, I just broke down, like completely lost it. I mean, I probably was like wailing a little bit in the courtroom. My sisters were just hugging me. And then I go back to the room, the lounge, and my detective comes back there and she goes, the jury wants to see you. Like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, the jury wants to see you. We're going to take you to the jury room. And I'm like, okay. They walk me back to the jury room and I walk in the room and they're all giving me a standing ovation. And they all wanted to hug me and say, thank you.
Julie gave a victim impact statement at his sentencing hearing, but finding the right words proved difficult.
I stressed about that for a long, long time because I had that meeting with the DA. And at that point, they tell you, you can talk to your attacker and tell him anything and everything you want. This is your opportunity to say your piece. I was like, I have so many questions. Can I swear at him? Can I, freak out? Like, and he's like, oh, you can do whatever you want. I'm like, anything I want. Okay. So that really, I mulled over that, mulled over it,
Yeah.
And I came to write probably 1,000 different rough drafts. I just kept thinking about how dare you sit there and just pretend like nothing ever happened. You're so innocent. And I was like, God, fuck you, guy. But my victim impact statement was written 15 minutes before walking into the courtroom. I have it. You want me to read it?
If you don't mind.
There are no words in the English dictionary to describe the way I feel about you. With the acts of one horrific night, you single-handedly dropped an atom bomb in the middle of my life, causing a ripple effect of emotional disturbance to me, my daughter, my family, and my friends. You are a disgusting excuse for a human being. For the rest of your life, I hope you sit stuck in limbo, wasting away the rest of your pathetic life in prison. I hope everyone knows what you did wherever you go. And then you can feel the humiliation of some of the worst criminals in Texas looking at you in disgust, spitting on the ground that you walk upon. I want you to know that no matter how much pain and anguish you have caused me, not once did I let you have the best of me. You met your demise when you met me. You saw me once as a small, weak little girl, when in reality I am a strong, smart woman, who in turn became a superwoman. Not once through any of this did you ever win. You robbed me of my cash, humiliated me, even almost took my life. But I would never let you steal my strength and perseverance. I knew I would get my justice from the moment of your attack. Part of me got through that night in order to see that justice served. You are a pathetic, weak, and stupid man, and you deserve everything you get. The whole time you thought you were in control of me, when in reality, I was the one in complete control. I am the reason you were caught. I got you. I outsmarted you. While you were busy terrorizing, I was busy thinking one step ahead of you. So, for all the victims you've broken, intimidated, left behind, and for all the ones who couldn't be here today, for my daughter, for my family, for my friends, and lastly for me, fuck you. May you rot in jail for the rest of your life, inflicted with pain and anguish.
In all three of his trials, Stanley Ledbetter Jr. was sentenced to life. But in a way, so was Julie.
I was diagnosed with lupus in 2017. When people go through severe trauma, body trauma, emotional trauma, a lot of times they end up getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. My grandmother had lupus, so it makes sense. And then, my dad has Graves' disease and my mom had multiple sclerosis. So I guess I kind of got the middle of the road, but, lupus has its own challenges and it's an emotional disease. So getting triggered emotionally is detrimental and make me sick. It manifests in so many different symptoms and all these other things, like being in Texas was literally killing me. I have an inability to control my body temperature. So being in a very humid and very hot environment was sending my kidneys into overdrive. The doctor basically looked at me and was like, unless you go from AC to AC and don't spend any time outside, you can expect kidney failure in 5 years. I said, you know what? Screw this state. I'm out. I'm done. And I left and came to Seattle. And since I've been in Seattle, because I was Bay Area girl all my life.
Julie moved to Texas from the Bay Area of California when she was in high school.
They say that your body is best acclimated and healthiest in whatever environment that you grew up in when you were going through puberty. So that's the environment that you need to be in to keep your health maintained or whatever. Seattle is very much like the Bay Area. I came here and it was like a weight was lifted, and I still struggle with lupus, but it's not progressing anywhere near like as fast as it was, because it was getting a little scary there for a minute.
Yeah. While it was clearly necessary for Julie to move away from Texas, it put her daughter, who was still in school, in a rough position.
Yeah, and she doesn't understand lupus. She doesn't understand that I had to leave Texas because I gave her the option. Said, do you want to stay here or do you want to come with me? Because she was in the same circumstances I was growing up. And, I was really angry that we moved from California to Texas right before my senior year.
Yeah.
And it affected so much of my life. And her dad was still there. And I gave her the choice. And she said she wanted to stay with her friends and her dad. She said later that she wasn't old enough to make that decision for herself. And I was like, I don't know. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So I just I'm trying my best here. So yeah, I don't know. I think that, now my daughter and I have suffered from a little bit of an estrangement over the years. And I think that if she's to listen to this, I just want her to know that she's the reason. She's the reason. So she's pretty important.
Did your estrangement have anything to do with what happened to you?
Yes, and in a very, very roundabout way, because of the choices that I decided to make. I tended to only think of the here and now, because that's what you're kind of trained to do after trauma, is focus on what's just here in front of you. And so, years later, she's like, well, why didn't you ever think of this? How this would affect me at this time. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was worried about how we were going to pay our electricity bill. Yeah, I have read lots of books on estrangement now, and I want to give her all the space in the world to set boundaries and do all of the things that she feels that she needs to do. And does it kill me every day? And if I think about it, how much I could cry and cry and cry? Yes, but it's the world that we're living in now, and I just have to respect that. And I was never taught how to set boundaries. That was something that came later on in life for me. And so her having the wherewithal to set boundaries at this time in her life, at 22, I'm like, you go, girl. Great. I don't care if it's with me. Practice somewhere. That's fine. Yeah. I'm proud of her and everything that she's done. She's going to do great things. And it'll take some time to come back around. But I hope that one day we'll get there.
Do you still see a therapist?
I should. I think everybody should.
Yeah.
I think it's, just like going to the doctor, you should go see a doctor for your head too. For people who compartmentalize, I like to compare it to putting things into boxes in my mind and shoving them in the back of the attic. So I have, over years, whether I liked it or not, I've pulled out those boxes at some point in time and dealt with them as best I could. I still have boxes back there I need to deal with. I know it.
Oh yeah. But even within yourself, it's a lead a horse to water, but can't make him drink.
Correct.
You can know that you need to deal with stuff, but
Yes.
You have to be ready to do it.
Yeah. And I think that there's a little bit of stubbornness in my case that's kind of goes along with that. I feel like sometimes I put a lot of other boxes in front of those boxes. And so I'm like, but those boxes are much more important to deal with right now. I know that there's stuff that needs to be dealt with, the fact that I still have triggers 18 years later, but I guess I kind of have a leg up because I've already done it. It's like once you go to therapy at least once, then you're like, okay, not so scary anymore,
Even though she's not currently in therapy, she does have her art as an emotional outlet.
I finally feel comfortable putting my stuff out in the world.
Yeah, that's such a vulnerable.
Oh my gosh.
feeling.
Yeah. It's like writing a book, right? And you're pouring your soul out. And
Yeah, and then you're
keeping
like,
it open for criticism.
here?
Yeah. And that's scary. It wasn't until I went to art school later on and I was like, okay, you got to get over that because
Well, yeah.
the teacher wants to see your work.
You're going to have to show this to somebody.
Right.
Julie's art Instagram is Juju Samurai Creations. Did art help you process any of this?
Oh, God, has it always let me process everything. That's my run to. I think that a lot of people run to things like addiction and other bad methods of coping mechanisms. My art has always been my coping mechanism. It's my release, and it's my sanity and my happy place.
Today, Julie has a surprising outlook on the attack.
It's just so funny because we have a joke about it now because it's like, I'm so thankful for the attack. Honestly, Caitlin, I like the attack is what made me who I am now. I don't know what kind of a person I was going to be. Again, 25. But the person that I turned out to be, I like, and I have grown exponentially, and I have a different perspective that I probably would never had.
Yeah.
I'm so much more thankful and grateful for my life than most people are. And I can't replace that. These are my scars are all, that's just all battle wounds. Like, I'm a warrior.
This is Live to Tell. I'm Caitlin Van Mall. You can follow the show on Instagram and TikTok at Live to Tell Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps the show. I'll see you in 2 weeks.